Okay, let's welcome up our guests. We'll start with executive producer and co-writer Ron Shusett. We have Diane O'Bannon, president of the O'Bannon Company, and David Weitzner, who is the former head of marketing, EVP of marketing over at 20th Century Fox.
Much water to float under the bridge.
So we should really start at the very, very beginning. And with that, obviously, leads us to Dan O'Bannon. And I was thinking maybe both of you could tell us about the beginning of your friendship, relationship, and how Dan O'Bannon got to the point that he wanted to tell this story.
Yeah, that's a great backstory.
Just make sure you use your mic.
Oh, hi. Hi, Diane.
Nice to see
We haven't
you.
seen each other in a while. Dan went to USC and I went to UCLA, so we really, at the beginning, hardly knew each other. And I became aware of him when I saw a little film he did, that probably all of you science fiction fans know about Dark Star, which he did as a thesis at film school here. But very few of them got done made. It was so good that Roger Corman picked it up and released it commercially. He only spent $60,000, but still, that was a breakthrough accomplishment of Dan's. And that's where I first became aware of him, since we went to different schools, didn't know each other, didn't work together. And I said, wow, this guy, I saw he did the special effects, and they were done in a budget, and the script was so witty, and the effects were so great. I said, I should be working with this guy, because I was in love with doing science fiction, had never done any film at that point. But one of the things I had the rights to was the story Total Recall was based on, by Philip Dick. Silly title, We Can Catch It For You Wholesale. We can remember it for you wholesale. But it was a short story, it was only 40 pages, so I realized it was going to be a hard job to make that into a full-length screenplay. It was only about, on page 40, the short story ended. You have to invent out of a whole cloth the second and third acts. But I saw Dark Star was brilliant. Not only Dan's work, I thought, okay, maybe it's too expensive for us to do even as a modest budget, low rent version of it. But so I contacted him and see if he wanted to work with me on it, that I had the rights to this. And of course, he was a science fiction lover, and he said, oh, I know, I love that short story, I know all about it. Yeah, I want to work with you on that, if you have the rights to that. I said, yeah, and he said, but I got something to show you, too, that I want you to work with me on. And he said, it wasn't called Alien, and it wasn't called Total Recall, and neither title was. There's this story I'm working on a film. I got about a third of it in film school done. And I can't get past the first act. But I'd sent some ideas I had. He said, I like your ideas. You've got some powerful ideas for how to make a story work. And all my contemporaries can't help me get past the first act. So I'd like to see if you have any ideas. And if you can help me I want you to read it. Come here, and I don't want you to leave. I want you to read it in front of me, because I don't know you. I don't trust you. Maybe you steal my ideas. You can't be very forthright like that. You read it while I sit here. You tell me what you think of it. I'll tell you, maybe I can help you make Total Recall. For you wholesale into a full-length screenplay, and you might be able to help me make this movie that I want to be. Everybody says brilliant, but nobody can help me make the breakthrough. I think maybe you might be able to help me. So I said, okay. I went to meet him. We got along right away. And he said, I propose we do my movie first, because it can be done as an all-time classic at a low budget, Roger Corman budget. But yours can't. It'll look schlocky unless we do it for $100 million or then $60 million or so. So I said, I'm agreed. And we shook hands, and that day, both movies were born. Both Alien and Total Recall. And who would know? We didn't have agents. We didn't have attorneys. We didn't know what we're talking about. Who would know both movies would get made at huge budgets and become classics? So you've got to have a miracle to have both those things happen. And we just wrote a napkin after we finished Alien and got close to it. We just wrote a napkin. Okay, this is what we'll do with Total Recall between us. We just wrote the deal between us. We thought it'd never get made. And it was just a miracle. It's the people around us in each case. What would Alien be without Ridley Scott? An ordinary, a regular director? They thought it was stupid. He was the 11th choice. They didn't have the vision. He was the only one. We thought all these big name directors said, no, we don't want to do this about a goddamn giant worm coming out of somebody's chest and a robot. And no name actor wanted to do it. And it was just a miracle, because the only reason it got made is they happened before they decided it was too crazy. It was like a Japanese schlock horror movie. Fox, even though they bought the script, they said, oh, this is too crazy. No name director and star wants to do it. They went to Jane Fonda, Candy Bergen, everybody. Ripley was just, Sigourney was just a small actress off Broadway. And she gave a great reading, that's how she got it. But Ridley was nobody then. He just did commercials. He had one movie that was a flop because it wasn't his vein. It was like a period piece, French duelist. It was great visually, but didn't have anything. I got to give him credit for thinking he could do it, because I said, what do they want this guy for? He doesn't look like he knows anything about suspense or horror or sci-fi. But it was a brilliant choice. Maybe they were forced into it because nobody else was interested.
Well, Ron, let's not get too far into the production, because I want to. I also want to kick the question of why Alien was right at Fox at that time to David. But first, I want to also mention that Diane, you met Dan here, right, at USC?
Yes, I did.
So tell us a little bit about the experience of being here at school with Dan. And the years that sort of followed up into this feature film.
Well, it was really a very different film school. It was in a stable, and it was just junky, unpaved, tar on the floor, quad, and it was wonderful. I'm not sure that better ideas come out of bigger buildings, honestly. It was really a lot of foment and contact with all the students together. And at that time, actors didn't want to work with film students, so I acted in student films, and whoever they saw on the campus, they'd go up. And it was great for getting girls. Hey, you want to be in my movie? And a lot of girls did, and it was fun. So that's what it was like here then. And but Dan was a real standout as an unusual character.
And obviously he wound up making Dark Star with John Carpenter while they were here. At what point did you start to get the sense that the Star Beast Alien project was sort of on his mind?
Well, he started writing Alien, what became Alien, in 1971. I think I have the first mention in a letter to a friend. He has an idea for a scene that's really gripping. People on a spaceship, they get an unknown signal. They go down to examine it. They don't know what the signal says, but then they're already down there, and it's deciphered, and it says, do not land, warning, do not land. So that was the first. And he wrote basically the first half of Alien in a story called Memory. And Exhibit A Pictures has just done a documentary called The Origins of Alien, Memory, The Origins of Alien. sort of documenting his first writings on it, which was basically the first half of it became the first half of Alien. So hopefully that premiered at Sundance, Exhibit A Pictures, and hopefully it's going into distribution to be able to see it. Hopefully.
David, give us some context. Fox had a couple of films that came out before Alien that did well, and I think it would be great to know a little bit about what the late 70s were like over at Fox and what their decision-making process was.
It was the Wild West. It really is. This on?
Yes.
I was hired by Alan Ladd Jr. to come to California and to market. They had run marketing for Fox, and to work on this film called Star Wars. So, I will tell you, and I think I should share with you, that if anybody ever tells you that we knew at Fox that Star Wars was going to be what it was, and I speak for George Lucas as well, they're lying. We really didn't know. And I really want to credit Alan Ladd Jr. because he was the force behind that. And I think with Alien, too, I mean, there was a certain sense, Ron, that Laddie brought to the executives of the company, and a certain leadership that he had.
Right, they resisted it. He was the only
Yeah.
one that said,
Yeah,
I can smell it.
Laddie was behind it.
He really was the one who convinced us. And it was an amazing time because, suddenly we had Star Wars under our belt. We could do anything we wanted to. We thought we knew everything. We were hiding money offshore because our contracts prohibited anything beyond the double bonus. So in the second year, we parked money offshore. Back then you could do it to guarantee that we had a second bonus. So it was a little bit like the Wild Wild West, and it was wonderful. It really was.
Don't kid yourself, they're still doing it.
And Lucas had only had one film before then, American Graffiti, but
That's
it had nothing
right.
to do with sci-fi.
American Graffiti, and that was a film. He got into a huge argument with Ned Tannen, who was the head of production at Universal, who hated the title American Graffiti, said it would never work, and the rest is history.
Ron, there's stories that you hear about Dan O'Bannon saying he was like sleeping on your couch, and you guys really sort of cracked the script, as you were mentioning before, with getting past the first act. Tell us about the decisions or the suggestions that you had, and how that, how you and Dan then worked to actually complete the first draft.
Oh, well,
Oh, yes.
okay. The funny part is, I wanted to work with him. I liked what he had of Alien. I thought, he said, what do you think? I said, it's brilliant. He said, yeah, it's brilliant, but I can't get past page 30. And I go to all my contemporaries to give me bat shit. He said, I hope you can come up with a way to get past page 30 now, and we'll deal with that first, and then we'll talk about a Total Recall, because nobody's going to pay any attention to a movie of that vast, sprawling, futuristic. But Alien can become a little classic sleeper, like when George did The Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, yeah. George
Classics, yeah. And those things, it can work as a low budget, but become an all-time classic. And I said, I agree with you. I think it has incredible potential. And he said, well, let's work on that first, and then we'll try and get Total Recall made. And so neither of us had any living money. Dan was living like a garret, like a USC, I think, garret-like place.
Menlo Manor over on
Oh,
the house is still there.
And
Cockroach Haven. Really was rotten.
and we were both dead broke, and my wife was paying for
Linda
my...
was working, yeah. Linda was Linda's the uncredited producer.
He decided to move in with us, so we tried to do it together. My wife was working at a hospital, but not as a nurse, but as an assistant. and she was the only one that had a job. Neither of us had the money for food or rent, and she believed and saw what Dan had written so far, and she thought Dan and I together it wasn't even a complete script, it was just part of it, but what was there was brilliant. So we had 2 rooms. He slept on the couch, and we slept in the other room.
Can I add something here while
Sure.
he was on the couch? Well, he just come back from Paris, where
yeah.
he was working on Dune,
Right.
and they'd sent him here to scout desert locations or something back home.
The first Dune with Jodorowsky.
With Jodorowsky, and they ran out of money while he was over here, so he couldn't go back. He lost everything in Paris. Everything stayed in Paris, and he was sort of deserted back home and didn't have anything. He actually came to, I was living in the house with a bunch of people. He actually came and slept on our couch first.
Yeah.
And we finally kicked him out because he didn't have anything. And we didn't have anything at the time. We're going like, we're all broke too. So the next couch over was at the Shusetts.
Yeah, and we couldn't live. It took months, of course. It just didn't snap our fingers and it all fell into place. And I remember we struggled, and he said, one day he said to me after we were working a month or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, we didn't seem to be getting anywhere past what he already had. And he said, come on, light up the board. I know you've got a way to help me make a breakthrough here. And I said, well, Dan, maybe I'm good at the bigger budget sci-fi, but I don't seem to be able to help you that much. And he said, oh, I know you've made more progress than I have with all the writers I've worked with before you, trying to get somewhere. I think you're close. I didn't think he was right. He said, I think you're close to making a breakthrough. This is like one of those Mickey Rooney and Judy. Let's make a show, you know. So, I said, well, I hope you're right, Dan. I don't know. I don't seem to be helping you that much. And I went to sleep. It was just in the other room. And it's true. It wasn't a dream, but my mind, when your subconscious is free, I remember it wasn't, he had the clue. He had the one way, Ron, and you can help me, I can't make this breakthrough myself. I know the key is to find out how the alien gets on board with these humans and how he joins them without being brought in a very obvious way, but in a creative, mind-bending way is to get aboard. And I said, I don't know, Dan. I can't quite think of a way that's better than you have. So I went to sleep there. I said, I don't seem to be able to do it for you. We were working a couple months or something. It was really hard. And then in the middle of the night, I had this kind of it was like a dream, Mike, and what he said was right. He said, how does the alien get on board? And I guess my mind was working in a dream state. But since he was only a few steps away on the couch, I said, Dan, I think I know how he might get on board. He said, how? I said, well, he impregnates one of the humans. He said, what? Your mind. I said, well, I think, yeah, but somehow it's a different life cycle, and maybe we could believe that he would impregnate one of them, and they'd have to perform surgery. And Gallagher said, how about this? How about he bursts out of his chest in the middle of the movie? Oh my God, Dan. I looked at him like he was nuts. I said, oh my God, Dan. If we ever did that in a movie, it would be astounding. And he said, okay, well, that's what we're going to do. That's all we have to do. Just figure out how he gets implanted, and they don't know it. It's growing inside him. They can't use x-rays because they've got like ink on an octopus gives he blocks off. They can't see it. It's growing inside. Then he bursts out of his chest in the middle of the movie. I go, oh my God. That's a major movie. No one's ever seen anything like that. And so then all we had to do was work out some minor details of how this egg-like thing had popped out of there, and the face hugger finally heard, oh, this thing grabs him and plants it down his throat. And I said, yeah, and they don't know it's feeding him air, but if we take it off, he can't breathe. And that became the the whole crux of it, as soon as we saw that thing in his face, and they finally had to take it off, but then from then you had no idea that they were going to have this dinner and talk about it, and the thing was going to burst out from his chest. But the brilliance of Ridley Scott, when he came into it, it was his notion that the actors wouldn't know how he did the effect. That they would see John Hurt just collapse table. That's the last they would see. They wouldn't know. They would think we're going to do the effects in post-production. But really, under the table, which was a round table that had siding, there would be a guy with a puppet, and it would go up to his wrist only. But that would be the first start of it breaking loose. And later, you'd see the whole creature. There'd be a special effect. There was no CGI then. You'd see the thing that looked like a crab or something scurry away. But before then, there'd be a guy under the table with a blood machine that looked like a sort of a container that had artificial blood. And what the idea was, there'd be like when you go to the beach and you take a picture with a strong guy or a muscle bind, you put your head in his. So what it's going to be, the body's hollow. It's not really John Hurt. When they last saw him, it was Hurt. But now, it's a hollow body, and they went to the butcher shop and bought all these parts. It smelled horrible and looked like human parts. And the guy with the blood machine would spray it as soon as they started, looked like arteries were cut. And the cast would never know how we did it. They would just be as shocked as everybody else. They would think, okay, we'll do this effect later. And they were upstairs while we made up John Hurt. And so that was a genius thing. So they didn't know what the hell happened. They thought there'd been an accident. Like, who was this martial arts star that got killed by a bullet, Bruce Lee's son?
Oh, Brandon Lee?
Yeah, they thought we'd made a mistake somehow. Somebody, it was a horrible mistake. Somebody, Veronica Cartwright was so upset she actually fainted.
And Ridley used that tape,
so
right?
convincing. And then the only one that seemed to know what was going to happen was Sigourney. So when I saw her, getting into character, none of them could have possibly known how it was going to be done. But I saw she looked real scared, I said, Sigourney, you're really getting into character. She said, I am scared. I said, well, what's a movie? like Hitchcock said, it's only a movie. She said, no, I saw you and Dan over in the corner wearing these plastic covers, and you acted like Christmas morning had finally come. See it, we were going to be scared shitless. You were going to spring it all. I said, oh my God, you weren't supposed to see that. And so that was great because we didn't think we gave it away, but we did. We had to wear all that plastic. And that was the only way any one of them. And Yaphet's wife, I remember, we became good friends. She said after he saw this, he would go up to his room every night and just sit there and wouldn't talk to anybody. He was so scared. It was so convincing. He said, I've been in a war, I've seen things, but that was the most horrifying thing I ever saw. Where did that thing come from under his chest? Well, when I thought it was real, it was just after that scene was shot, the whole cast was in character. They were totally scared. And it was like, it became, if it hadn't been the combination of things like that, where there was one floor and it had all our different sets, but it was like the top one level of the spaceship, and they were locked in there. They never knew where the creature was hiding next. And it was just, they read the script, but we never said where he would pop up. We just said, Eileen suddenly appears, he's hiding on the wall, he's coming down from the ceiling. And so after that moment, they didn't take it like just a horror movie. They were superb actors. But I remember Ridley said, I'm terrible with actors. My game is visual. So I'm going to cast it director-proof. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm going to cast it so every actor gives a great performance without any help at all from me.
If I may, I want to just even go back to the fact that Ridley became the director, because I know that Dan was originally planning to direct the film himself.
Yeah. He
So
always wanted to be a director, and he later did direct some things, but that was too big a bite to swallow as his first movie.
Diane, do you want to jump in at all about the process of sort of, if you can share anything about sort of like Dan allowing the script to wind up with another director?
Well, I will tell you that he kept some of the he kept some of the rejection letters for Alien to gloat over later.
Yeah.
Oh look, this guy rejected it. You know.
Yeah, right,
It's
right.
a big deal. The interesting thing about the script is Ash does not appear in the original screenplay. That character was added by the producers.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. Ira Hill came up with that idea.
Yeah, they've expanded on it since, but that was not in the original
That was the only idea
screenplay.
they contributed after
That's
they
it.
were
That's
hired
all.
by Fox.
Yeah, after
But
that.
Dan and I both liked it. So that the studio said, well, these guys didn't even create this idea, and they believe in it. Let's do it. If we hadn't believed in it, we were the original. Usually the original, I said, no, I don't want that. Our monsters are here. We don't want a robot.
I don't know.
But we were both
Dan was
for it.
pretty firm that his writing was the best, and no improvement necessary.
Right.
He said, well, how did they get it in the spaceship? He said, you don't need a reason. People
Right.
just do shit like that. They're just like, okay, let them in. You don't need. There's no ulterior, no motive needed. Those people
Right.
were idiots. So, I don't know if he was so pleased with that edition, frankly, but it's kind of interesting to read the original screenplay before those changes were made. But otherwise, it's pretty right on.
Yeah, very close.
But as you were talking about the details, it's well, how does it get out of there onto his face? Well, how does he keep breathing? All of these things. You have to figure all this out when you're sitting there.
Yeah.
But Dan described his months of writing that as, he says, when you're the writer, you're sitting there, you have to be in the spaceship with the monster.
Right.
So, it takes, if anybody here is writing, it takes an intensive concentration, and you have to be there with it. Another point that Dan was firm about in his writing was that if there's no real monster, there's no real hero. You have to have a real threat, something that's, you can't, if there's no monster, there's no hero. I can't say it any better than that. So the better your monster, the more you can get into the mind of your monster, the better your hero will be getting out of it. But you have to be as much for the bad guy as the good guy when you're writing something. You're going to make it effective and convincing.
Definitely. Well, you know about how Dan found Giger, I guess, when he was working on Dune, and he met Giger, who was just painting a fine artist.
Yeah, Dan was in Paris with Jodorowsky, also a very interesting character. And while he was there, Giger was having an exhibition in Paris, and Dan saw the catalog that Jodorowsky brought him, and he said, boy, if this guy would do a monster in a monster movie, this would knock everybody dead.
Yeah, but blow everybody away. Yeah.
And when they got an opportunity to, it looked like Alien was going into production, Dan really pitched hard to get Giger over. Yeah, well, that's
The
the
studio resisted
thing.
with all their might because
He did, and
they wanted the traditional type of. They looked at it and they said, "Oh my God,
well,
this is
and
like
these
foreigners."
foreigners, these foreigners, they don't speak English. What do we want of them? But Dan convinced him, and actually Brandywine, the producers, Gordon Farrell, and they said, okay, and he said, well, we'll send him some money and he'll do some sketches.
We said we'll try and get
And
him.
they would not send the money, so Dan wrote a personal check.
Wow.
That's why those pictures, if you go on the exhibit, it says Dan O'Bannon's Alien.
Yeah.
Because Dan paid for those. And we have been looking for that check, that canceled check, forever. My God, look, the design's ours, But alas, can't be
And you know,
found.
they resisted. They said they were going to fire us if we keep talking about this guy.
Exactly.
You guys got to quit talking. You don't know
Okay.
yourself what you're talking
So
about.
anyway, Dan O'Bannon had no money, but he came up with $1,000 to pay Ridley, and we've got the letters. It's one of them is in the case out there about
Wow.
this is what's necessary. Also, for the mechanics of the screenplay, Dan had to give him the egg and the thing that came out of the egg and the chestburster. You know
Right. We had all
the
the
face huggers like that. But he said to Giger, he said, these are the requirements, mechanical requirements for the first phases, but I don't want to give you any idea at all about the monster. Let your imagination run wild.
Right. That was
Don't, you know.
one of the most
Well,
valuable contributions.
Well, and Dan was an artist himself, and
Right,
he didn't
right.
want to step on anything Giger might have to give.
Right.
He had great respect for Giger's work. Also, Jean-Giraud Moebius. I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work from Middle-Earth. That, but very, very wonderful artist. Ron Cobb.
Oh, yeah.
He
Right.
hauled all those people onto that movie.
Right, yeah. He met him when he worked for Free Press, or was it?
Yeah, Ron Cobb was doing political cartoons for
Yeah.
the free press at the time, and Dan was sort of hanging around and said, "Do you like your work?" And it's this weird guy, and I was like, "Okay, he likes my work, so what?" Anyway, when he got with Carpenter to do the Dark Star, Dan said, "I know the guy to do it. I know the guy to do it," and ran over to Cobb, and Cobb said, "Sure, I'll do this," and that's how Cobb's career.
They didn't want any of these.
It's good. Dan, believe me, he lost a lot, forking these people into this movie. He made a lot of enemies.
But let's put some studio perspective on this,
Okay.
because Giger's work.
Suits.
Yeah, the suits. Giger's work, especially the ones that we have up in the exhibit, are very provocative, erotic, an element to the alien design that I think increasingly manifests itself in the movies too, particularly in the fourth one.
Sure.
So
He did renderings for us as we were writing the script. We would just give him the basic concepts, and he would do the designs
Right.
without getting paid at first, and then we would put them in the script, 10 ranges or so. And the studio, hey, this is insane. We can't use this guy. How's he going to look on screen? We don't have any idea.
Well, studio suit. What did you think of when you first saw the materials you're going to have to work with to market this movie?
I just want to share one interesting story for a second. It's certainly been interesting to me. Ron, I think you were there when the suits descended upon London to see the film. It was the first screening of the film for the studio. And we arrived, Laddie, Jay, Gareth, and the group. And we had all been through the script several times. And so we knew what to expect. 2 days later, it may have been the next day, but at the most 2 days later, a group of us flew back and wanted to experiment the Concorde. So we decided to play on the Concorde and fly to New York and then to LA. And from that trip, leaving London, there was an imprint on my leg, on this leg, that lasted a couple of days. And it was from Bob Gillian, the head of publicity for 20th Century Fox, who grabbed my leg like that during the screening when we had the chestburster. It was the most executives, the suits were cowering from this moment. We were scared to death.
I know.
Absolutely
Yeah,
scared.
well, Ron Cobb walked to the wrong car. His car was red at the first screening of the Alien. As we were looking at ourselves, he walked tried to get into a gray car, and his car was red. Oh my God. When you saw it the first time on the full screen, everyone was shocked. Everyone, I think, but Ridley, was shocked because the way he shot it. It
Yeah.
wasn't silly. We could have been laughed at.
No, it was amazing. It was one of the most amazing screenings I had ever been to. I mean, it was amazing to be there.
And so when you're putting together the marketing plan for this film, you have to make some decisions. First of all, you're marketing not just a science fiction film, but a horror film, which obviously is a little bit, not necessarily the exact same audience as Star Wars. And you've got a creature that's incredibly disturbing, but that you don't want to give away. The film is very careful in how it presents the alien. So to give us a sense of the philosophy behind the campaign.
I will, but I certainly don't want to take credit where credit is not due, so let me set the record straight on this campaign. The Weitzner theory of marketing, which I have followed my entire career, is that good marketing begins with positioning your product, understanding what you have to sell and what you want the consumer to know. Alien was probably the toughest campaign of all the campaigns I've done, including Star Wars, including E.T., and a raft of films over my career. Because really, what is it? Is it science fiction or is it horror? In fact, is it both? And if it's both, do I risk the chance of mispositioning the film with the materials that I use by conveying the wrong thought, really, that it's horror? So we had to be really, really careful. So here's the simple story to this thing. I've been a student of marketing since I was in grade school. And I followed advertising, and I ended up somehow through an errant golf ball hitting the president of Columbia Pictures. That began my career. So I've had an interesting career. I've marketed a lot of films. Back in 1968, I was still in New York. I'm a New Yorker, and grew up there and started my career there. There was a film that the campaign just knocked my socks off. It was brilliant. It stood for everything I believe good motion picture marketing should be. That film was Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys know it, or you know the campaign, if you don't, go look on Google, take a look at the poster, and take a look at the campaign, and take a look at the words, which was simply, pray for Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Everything I ever believed in terms of terse copy, really strong graphics, I've tried to pursue my entire career. I wanted Steve Frankfurt, because Steve Frankfurt was the guy who was behind Rosemary's Baby. And I met with Steve. And we hired Steve Frankfurt, and through Frankfurt, the company was really Frankfurt Gips Balkan.
And the one that came up with the egg?
Yeah. And they were the ones, I had my meeting with Steve, I said, Rosemary's Baby. That was, I swear to you, that was my direction to Steve. Rosemary's Baby. We talked a little bit more about it, but he knew what I was looking for. They came up with the campaign, and it was one of those moments. I had other people working on it, but they came into my office, they presented that campaign. It's one of those moments when it's just a bolt of lightning. There it is. It can't be any better. It's perfect. The copy line written by Barbara Gibbs, which was in space, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah.
That combination, which you saw on the way in here, and which exists as the campaign for this film, is probably one of the campaigns, if not the campaign, I'm most proud of. I had nothing to do with it. What I did do was hire the right guy, the right team, and give them, I think, the right direction, which was Rosemary's Baby.
But they always thought, traditionally, when we first heard of that, until we saw the egg in space, we thought, well, what is this campaign going to be? Because if you showed little snippets of it, it looked like it would be a Roger Corman movie. So at first they were trying to show parts of the food, and that left everybody cold because you couldn't show enough to scare them.
Well, one of the things, if you guys ever want to look on Google or look on YouTube and take a look at the trailer and the TV spots and everything else that we did, it's the one thing I wanted and we did was, it's everything we did was frenetic. Quick cuts. You never really know quite what you saw, but God, at the end of the 30-second commercial, at the end of the trailer, you really were worn out.
Right.
And that's what we wanted. That's what we looked for. And back then, you could do a teaser trailer. You could follow that with another trailer, and sometimes even 3 different trailers.
Yeah, some more advanced along the way.
Yeah, and again, the pace of the television commercials are frenetic, and they're really, really well done. It was there was also the addition of the typeface, which you see on the poster, which you see on the film, which again came through the Frankfurt group, and I believe it was through R. Greenberg and Associates, the 2 Greenberg brothers, who really came up with that, and that was amazing.
Was he the guy that also came up with the Superman
Yes,
titles?
yes,
That's
yes.
so amazing.
The Greenberg, yeah. Yep.
I remember when Dan and I first saw, we hated all the earlier, more conventional books that showed little film, and it looked like it'd be a cheap film because you couldn't show the really horrific things. They didn't want to give it away. And so we both shaking our heads, no, this is not right, it's not look like a unique film. And then we first saw The Egg and Space, You Can Hear You Scream. Dan said, in space, no one can hear you scream. Wow, that's it. And that's all it was like our first reaction that we ever saw about, oh my God, that's perfect. Nothing could be as good as that.
When I had to present the campaign to Laddie and the group, the suits, it was really a terrific meeting because nobody changed anything. Everybody just said, that's it. And that was really what we went with, and that has become the campaign.
You know, the thing about Eileen is there's just luck at every step of the way. You try for things, and you sometimes hit it, some hit, some not, but everything went well with this. You can't plan that. You have to have it has
to be destiny.
It has to be destiny. It has to be. I mean, you have to have good stuff, but everybody has to hit their mark, and they certainly did with this film.
And looking back on this, I mean, all of these actors are fantastic, and Sigourney was completely unknown,
right,
at the time. And I'm curious to talk.
The best reading, she was just an off-Broadway actress.
Tell us about bringing in Sigourney. Also, because the script that you guys originally wrote, the characters were gender neutral.
Yeah. Right.
So the fact that there was a woman lead wasn't necessarily something that you wanted to put immediately in the beginning.
We just had a little footnote that said once we knew it was going to be Fox and a big budget and Otto Corman film Sleeper, we put a little footnote which said any of the two characters could be women. And so we didn't think anything of it. And then Laddie said to us in a meeting, could Ripley be a woman? And we looked and she said, yeah, I guess so. They said, go home. We saw it as Kirk Douglas or somebody, because that was it. She was such a powerful presence. But we went and they said, well, go home and make her into a woman. So Dan and I looked at each other, we said, let's just keep the dialogue exactly the same. We handed it to them. We handed it to them and they said, God, you guys did a brilliant job. Writing for a strong female lead. We never told them the same word. So again, like I'm saying, you just have to be destined. We never dreamed that because no woman could carry a horror or action movie before. And that was almost, we realized you had to do something like that. We didn't realize we didn't have to change a word, just the names.
Yeah. Dan, did you want to add something to that?
No. Just that my husband always had great respect for women as prime creators, he called them. And he liked strong women. So he always sort of put a strong woman character in his.
Yeah.
He never did like scare the girl in his movies. It was not like scare the girl.
That was too stereotype, like corny, like.
Well, it's like that's so cheap,
scare
the girl.
Yeah.
So there was never his
routine. Yeah.
Never his thing.
Well, I'm curious, David, without the lack of an established movie star as the main character here, how does that affect the campaign for the film? Obviously, Sigourney becomes very quickly the face of the franchise and is used extensively in all of the other film marketing materials for Aliens, Alien 3, etc. But for this one, you didn't necessarily have that.
No, I think with the launch of the first film, word of mouth is really what sold the film. I mean, marketing, good marketing, can do one thing and one thing only, and that is open a film. Once the film is open, it's up to the public, it's up to the film itself.
Right, it has to stand on its feet.
And the word of mouth on this film was tremendous, and that's why the film succeeded.
You know, it was 20 years before it was publicly acknowledged or written about anywhere that this is a film about male rape. It took 20 years before, you know, Dan said, gee, they finally caught on, you know, before it was able, you know, somebody says, gee, you know, this is male rape here. It was 20 years.
Actually seen when you're shoving a magazine down?
No, because that's, what is that? I don't know. That's
This
interruption in the thing. But when the ovipositor, you know, from the bug goes down his throat, that's male rape.
Yeah.
That character, first of all, had to be a man, because if it had been a woman, it would have sent a different signal to the
Oh,
audience.
absolutely,
True.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's true.
So I'm curious if you guys can tell us a little bit about once this film opened and was just this global phenomenon, you know, sort of how it affected your lives. I mean, obviously you went on to make Total Recall.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Total Recall close to completed, but we knew we had no chance unless Alien would get made and be a sensation. So I think we had 3/4 of it written, and then within a year or so we finished Total Recall after Alien became a smash. But it changed our line. We had the same agent, Michael Werner, and neither of us were anybody. You know, we were just trying to get this made. And all of a sudden, Werner would say, people say, well, how does it feel? Your guys are now hot as hell, you know. And he said, yeah, and now it's all easier. Now they're both somebody, even though they were both nobodies before then. And then this movie put them both on the map. And I remember, but Dan was always more realistic than I was. I mean, he didn't believe, I was more of a showman, trying to be a promoter, be a rah-rah guy. And I remember when the people would talk to us and they'd say some nice things about us, Dan was skeptical. He said, but are they going to do anything about it? And finally, after Alien became a sensation, it changed all our lives incredibly. We'd go any meeting and everybody wanted to work with us. And before then, they thought we were just two nutty guys. But without Ridley, without Giger, how could the movie have been whatever Dan and I created? It was so enhanced by the genius around us that, like Diane said, all those things had to go right. And what are the odds of that?
I got a swimming pool out of it.
Well, I mean, it does seem though that what Dan must have witnessed with Jodorowsky of the potential of bringing together so many brilliant creative minds is actually, what unfolded on Alien.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely, and a lot of other things. And I also wanted to mention that the timing was right for Alien as well. 2001, Star Wars,
Right.
and so the audience was primed for the next
Right.
science fiction thing.
Dark
so,
side of Star Wars.
yeah, you can't, when you do something for the first time, some people just don't get it, but then everybody gets into it. So coming after 2001, coming after Star Wars, it really, the whole thing was just timed perfectly for that. And in terms of how it changed Dan's life, it changed it, of course, very much. But a number of years after we were married, I went into a Barnes & Noble bookstore and saw a plushy face hugger. Now, you know, we hadn't been paying too much attention, you know, to this going along, and my son and I said, it was $36. I'm going, oh my God, this is uncut. So I had to buy it, and I took it home to Dan, and I said, you're never going to believe what I have brought you. And because he basically designed the face hugger, and he took it out of the package, and he put it on his head. And he just sat there like this. I said, this is what's happening. And then we looked online, and of course that's all she wrote. But that was his reaction.
Yeah.
Not in the consciousness every day, but
It was almost too astounding.
yeah, it's like you go somewhere.
Everybody talking about two other guys? Everybody
Well,
wants to work with us. I don't get it.
Well, and even, you know, the poor xenomorph is just a slave to 20th Century Fox, and he's always, I say he's kind of like an embarrassing uncle, you know. I call it the monster from my husband's id, like in Forbidden Planet, monster from the id. And, you know, he's kind of like, yes, the monster, yes. People sending me monsters, and, oh, here's a monster card, and here's a monster thing. Yes, thank you so very much. So he's always around. You know, the monster's sort of always there. So.
And I didn't tell you this, Diane. When Dan went over and got the Yoda out, we were trying to work on Alien and Total Recall, both first Alien. And then he had to leave because he had to stop to go work on Jodorowsky's the design and script of Dune. And so I was left by myself, and I couldn't make any progress without working with Dan. But I was getting discouraged because I thought we could do Alien and maybe eventually Total Recall. But I just, you know, it seemed I needed him, and took the two of us to make the breakthrough and actually get a first draft of Alien working. So my wife took me to this priest, Dr. She was Presbyterian, I was Jewish. So she had grown up with this guy who was a priest to her family, a minister, and she said, my husband's very depressed, and I don't know, can you say anything to him? And so I went to see him, and this is really amazing because it involves what happened when Dan came back, too. He said, okay, well, look, I've had a vision of people that I felt something good was going to happen for. And I can tell you, I have this vision that you're on the right track. You're going to get a phone call, which turned out to be Dan. Go home. Don't do anything different. Just wait for a miracle. And so your miracle's coming. Somebody's going to call you, and they're going to start, and all the doors in Hollywood are going to open to you. And so I was elated. Of course, oh my God. I said, it sounded so convincing, you know. And then about a month later, I get the call from Dan. Ron, can I sleep on your couch? There's a new thing that's called off, and I can't get anything done. Dan, you're my miracle. He said, what? I told him a true story. Ron, that guy tells everybody that. He's full of bullshit. Maybe we'll get it made, maybe we won't. But, you know, he was so practical, and I was such naive. I was ready to believe it. Oh, yeah, that's what did the whole thing. And ironically, doors did open after we worked on it along for months, but it did all fall into place, and everything changed. You know, and the agent couldn't sell us anywhere. It was just too crazy.
Well, I have one last thing I want to ask before we take some questions from the audience. David, maybe you could start us off on this, which is obviously 1979, different era, not necessarily as sequel crazy as we are now, but it did take quite some time before there was this push to make Aliens. And I'm curious to know, first from the studio perspective and then from the creative side, like what was what sort of discussions happened about there possibly being another movie?
You mean after the first one?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about what happened with the sequel.
I have to beg out of this because I'm not sure. My memory fails me at moments like this because I live my life by contracts.
Mhm.
And I don't remember whether I was still at Fox or not because I left when Laddie left. So there were 16 of us left at one time. And I'm not sure when the timing, what we're talking about.
Oh, I don't necessarily mean what brought about Aliens. I mean, after this film was made, if there was a studio sense that there should be another one.
This absolutely. I mean, the day after the film opens, when money is coming in, the conversation it hasn't changed. It was that way long before, and it'll stay that way. There's conversation about a sequel, yes.
I wonder why it took so long.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I wonder as well.
That's a really
Yeah, I guess maybe they needed a strong character like Cameron. But Cameron was very nice and invited us to the premiere. Got to see that. That was very nice. Because the others really don't, you know. We hear about it later.
Right.
It's like, what? Alien what? Okay. They call up and want stuff from you, but they'll never give you anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, we're having a thing. Would you like a, free bottle of champagne? You never get that. You never get that. But they want free stuff from you. It's like, we're doing another edition. Will you come for an interview? You go, no, I'm not doing it. Where's my champagne? I want swag. I want swag. Even on this, the 40th anniversary, and here you get swag. I'm hearing people getting swag. I emailed Chris. I said, "Where's my swag? I hear there's swag. I want the T-shirt. Where is mine?"
Well, I didn't get a T-shirt.
Well, I don't know.
I
if
did
there's
get a
T-shirt.
James
I want
Cameron
T-shirt.
action figure
Where's
from
the
Aliens.
thing, I said, Chris, where's swag? You're in charge of franchises. I want swag.
Well, we do have a School of Cinematic Arts hat for you.
Oh, good. I'll take it. I take swag.
But do you for either of you, was there a sense from you or from Dan to actually come up with a story for a sequel? Because I know James Cameron wrote the screenplay for Aliens, so that very much sort of came from his passion to go into this world. But had there been any discussions about writing something yourselves?
It's too hard to begin to think how you would do a sequel to a movie like that.
And Dan was against doing sequels anyway.
Yeah.
Said, move on. There's other people with other stories. Go do that.
Right.
Why do you keep doing the same thing over and over again? And he continually said that. Every sequel that came out, he's going like, why are they doing this? Well, it's obvious why they're doing it.
It's a money machine.
Yeah, it's a cash cow.
But so few of the sequels ever were as good. Most over and over sequels would be a disappointment to the first one.
Well, of course, because the first one's so brilliant.
Yeah. Right.
It is.
Like they once said, well, you ask any Hollywood executive, he wants to do something that's very similar to another big hit, but not quite the same. A little bit different, but not too different.
Not too different. Well, I think that comes back to marketing. How are you going to market it? What's your audience? Where are you going to position it? I've got an idea. Alien, all women cast.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still waiting for Alien 5, where Sigourney shows up on Earth as like the god of the aliens. So like the sort of only natural conclusion to that story. But well, let's open it up and take a few questions from out here. I know that the yes.
Hi, amazing movie, obviously. I just love how Ripley was careful, discerning, followed protocol, and her decisions were conservative, and she was rewarded with survival. And this cautionary tale of exploring beyond your means is now a very common trope in sci-fi. And I felt like Alien was saying that scientific inquiry at the expense of humans can be a form of intellectual greed. And so, and those ideas are still, really relevant today. And Alien has aged really well. And I'm wondering, do you have any advice for future filmmakers with regards to coming up with new themes and stories that are interesting but won't be dated?
I do. Posthumously, I managed to get my husband's book published, Dan O'Bannon's Guide to Screenplay Structure.
Fantastic.
And he has what he calls dynamic structure, and it's how to get your idea up and walking off the page and onto the screen. It's you can fit any idea into it because it's a very movable structure. And I wanted to mention also, if you're interested, Michael Weesey Productions just does publish nothing but film books, sound, editing, everything, lighting, MWP.com. If you go there, you'll see wonderful, wonderful books. But yeah, and I think it's not just intellectual greed. I think it's monetary greed too. What you mentioned about scientific inquiry. Wayland Yutani is out for itself. This is not just intellectual curiosity. They're going to make hay out of it.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. In the extended cut for the original Aliens, there's a scene where Sigourney goes up a ladder and finds a bunch of the crew members being turned into eggs. And then in the next movie, in Aliens, it turns out instead it was a queen that would lay eggs. So I was curious to see, since you didn't have much part to do with the Aliens, if you liked the new direction or if you liked the original one you all came up with.
You mean in the sequel where?
Yeah, so in the sequel, there's the alien queen, but in the original, with the extended cut, it looked like the alien was turning people into eggs.
Okay,
They're
was
cooking
that,
them.
Yeah.
was that Cameron's first Aliens or not?
Well, he's saying that the way that the life cycle of the parasite sort of regenerates is by cocooning
Right, and later they
the
found
dead bodies, and then the next one it's because there's a queen laying eggs.
Right, they found Harry Dean and I think
It was Tom Skerritt.
Garrett,
Yeah.
and they were interwoven in this web kind of that the alien had made of them.
Yep.
Well, we all felt, the studio and Dan and I and everybody, the movie was working great, except when we had this stuff in the climax, it just slowed it up. You have to wait till she heard and went down there and saw them.
Yeah, that was in the director's cut, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. If I can say this, Dan was very, very much against explaining the mystery.
Yeah.
It's like, why are they, they're inventing new things, and that's already interesting. But he said, leave the mystery.
Right.
Where is it from? What is its ultimate aim? So he was against sequels altogether.
Yeah.
There's other people out there with other ideas that are just as good.
But I do have to say that Fox has showed, when they first were against it, didn't want Giger and thought this is nuts, and it's about 6 people will come to see it because it was so weird, almost pornographic. When they came down, when Ridley said, no, I gotta saw Giger's work, and Dan and I showed it to him, they kept warning him, "We don't show this to anybody." Giger's work, and we showed it to Ridley, invited him to Hollywood to have lunch with him. We showed it to him, he said, okay, that's what we're going to do. And we said, well, no, they'll fire us if you even tell them you saw it. I'm not going to tell them I saw it from you. I'll say I happened to come across it. I'm only going to do the movie if you do this now. And they didn't have another director. And they said, oh, okay, I guess we have no choice. He wants to go with this Giger crazy guy that O'Bannon and Shusett are so fond of. And then later, when they came from Hollywood to visit the sets after they were 60 feet tall, and a lot of them were built, their eyes bugged out, and they said, oh my God, we were wrong. These sets should be in the Museum of Modern Art. It's amazing that you pushed us into this. We thought it would be a catastrophe. So we got to give them credit. Maybe they were against it or didn't have the vision, but they were able to eat their words and say, okay, we were totally wrong. This is the perfect guy for this movie. Giger.
Plus, I think Ridley is a good schmoozer. He knows how to work with people and make things acceptable and explain things, and it'll be all right. He's very reassuring. You should never sort of underestimate that aspect of directing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing too, we haven't mentioned that Ridley came out of advertising.
Right.
That was his background in
Right.
the UK. So he had a sense of short form.
He was an artist, too, right?
Yeah, and he could, yes, that was really
Yeah, I remember when we first met Ridley when he flew here. Dan and I didn't know him. Fox, and we, they couldn't get any of the big names they wanted, or they all thought this was crazy. And we had our first meeting with him. And Dan and I, and Guyler and Hill, who'd done several rewrites on it. But we, of course, wanted our draft and didn't like their rewrites, which is normal, but they just weren't, they were better at other veins than science fiction. Guyler was good at sort of comedy, Jane and Dick, I guess, and Walter Hill was a gritty action guy.
Yeah.
But they didn't really have a grasp of good science fiction. So in the meeting, it was awkward. There's Dan and I and Guyler and Hill, and Ridley we didn't think was the right guy for it. We thought, how are they going to use him? And then everything he said, we liked. He said, I want this to be not pretentious. I want it to be like every edge of your seat, bare knuckles, white knuckles, B-movie type, but look like 2001. Oh my God. He's the right guy for this movie. He's going to knock it out of the park. And so we loved everything he said. We knew, oh my God, it was going to be just what we thought. It happened to be favoring everything that we believed in, and not what the studio rewrites had changed it into more normal movie, more homogenized everything. So I remember when Dan and I walked out of the meeting, we were so happy we were hugging each other, and Guyler and Hills were behind us, and Laddie didn't want to interfere. He didn't want to be in the movie because he didn't want to weight it towards those guys were successful deals. They got the financing for us because they had deals at Fox, and they did believe in the script. And Guyler and Hill were behind us and talking to Laddie. He said, Laddie, Shusett and O'Bannon have seized control of the movies. And they don't know what they're talking about. And he said, that's the way it works. Ridley believes in them more than he believes in what you're doing. You have a better shot at them than they do. You're the successful writer. You got the financing. If you can't turn them around, we're just going to shoot the movie the way Dan and Ron wrote it. And they were so upsetting. Well, how can you believe that? They don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, they basically, Guyler and Hill sort of tried to steal the credit.
Right,
steal
they
the
tried to
script,
hijack it
basically.
in all these ways.
Yeah.
Falsely
And
say they wrote it and
They,
put their names on it.
yeah. The first one was crap. Dan and Ron's stuff was
Yeah,
crap.
right.
It would be, but ours is a screenplay based on a screenplay. So no, you get co-writing credit. If you add something to the screenplay, you become a co-writer,
Right.
whether the original writers like it or not.
Right.
But they didn't get that. They can't claim they did either.
No. Well, the credits spoke for themselves. Everybody knew, and all you had to do was, the whole world knew Dan and I did it, and they didn't get any writing credits. Not even story.
They better not.
So it stopped upsetting me after a while. I said, they can't hurt us.
Well,
But there were some other kind of bogus lawsuits that came out too, right? I was looking at one about someone who claimed that he had written almost an exact same story,
oh, right.
but
yeah.
then Dan showed
It's
the
the date.
proof of copyright from
Yeah.
having
It's
written the
the
script
date.
like a year earlier.
Yeah, they went to court even. The guy was there, said, like, what is the date on your screenplay? What is the date? They said, case dismissed, and walked out. Well, there are a lot of typical scientific tropes in Alien. The creature getting aboard a ship is not necessarily new.
Right.
Or, so many of these
Or
things.
stalking the people on board.
Stalking the people on board, but it's just very well done. Very many original turns. Those details, how are you going to keep him breathing with this thing on his face? The thing, how it, it's all written out there.
Yeah, it was so believable.
Right? Yeah.
And the actors, everybody loved, like Yaphet and Harry Dean, because they're like truckers in outer space.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
humanized it,
Yeah.
And like Yaphet say, I don't want to go, SOS, I don't care about it. I'm going to go and party. And Harry Dean said, what about bonus? What about bonus?
Well, and something else I like is that there are female members of the crew, but it's not sexualized in any way.
Right.
I mean, you're kind of looking for that. Well, it's,
Right.
in bed with Dallas. effect.
Right.
But you're not really, you realize that that's not what's going on in this. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but it's not a deal, you know?
Right.
So I think
Part
that,
of what's happening.
yeah, it's
a
so,
side issue.
yeah, so that, whatever that was, has been handled beautifully by Ridley. And because it wasn't in the story, there were not necessarily women or men in the story. So I think that was handled beautifully. Another thing is the dynamite crotch shot of Sigourney. There is no, you know, you're at the peak moment of anxiety in this movie. And there's her little, you know, her clean little panties, and she's stepping into the, I mean, there's never, Orson Welles could not come up with that more brilliant, I swear, more brilliant sequence than that.
And she was
Talking
supposed to
about
be
sexuality.
naked, right? In the very first imagining of that scene.
No, that's Ridley. There was no,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's the guy who gets into the space.
No. I mean, Sigourney has said that she was originally supposed to be naked.
Here
Wanted
she,
to go topless, just
Yeah, but
No.
because the studio didn't
Ridley
want there to be that level of.
no, she has to have the nice clean little panties. That's much more sexy.
And Ridley said, "Oh no, we can't detract from a monster like that." Keep your top on, for God's sake.
Anyway, that's Ridley.
Yes.
I almost lost my question after that comment. Anyway, thank you for bringing this film in for this anniversary. I think it's very important. It should be studied by all the students in the school. It should be studied frame by frame. Well, my question is, obviously, Ron was saying Fox took a chance with this movie, like they did with Star Wars. Was there any other kind of bidding war with other studios, or were people rejecting it left and right because it was so different?
So Fox obviously took a chance on this film. Were there other studios that had been interested? Was there any kind of competition for it?
No, it was Laddie that had the instinct. Another studios that looked at it and they just dismissed it. And Laddie said, even his own people, his executives, were kind of reluctant. They thought about it. They said when they couldn't get a star or director, they even sent us a letter saying, well, it looks like we're going to have to put it into turnaround. And Linda and I just were crying and holding each other because we thought, oh, this is going to get made. They put up, a little option money, $15,000. And the only really thing that got it made, I think, was before they did much about putting it in turnaround. Before we didn't know where to begin. How are we going to go with this thing? We don't have a star director. Fox, which seems doesn't want to make it. And then what happened was, Laddie had been friends with Spielberg. And Spielberg was totally, Jaws, he became at 26, he did Jaws, and the highest grossing movie ever. And everybody wanted him for everything. And he was too committed to his other people and things like Close Encounters. He couldn't possibly direct the movie. But Laddie said, I'm going to go to Spielberg. Later, I didn't find this out till maybe a year later, why really all of a sudden, don't sell it to anybody else, stop, we're making a movie, And I thought, well, did they get a big star, a big director? No. What happened was that Laddie had said, Stephen, Spielberg told me this himself. He said, what do you think of this? I don't know, I have a feeling that they're wrong, but my executives are saying it's just too risky, it's too crazy, we don't have a name star, we don't have a director. These guys have never written anything before, let alone a success. What is your gut feeling about this? And Laddie didn't tell me this after the first preview. And he said, Laddie, if you don't make this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Don't listen to anybody. Go right in and make it, because it's like Jaws, except by definition it's science fiction, so it's more imaginative. It's just as scary as Jaws. So all of a sudden, when Laddie heard that, he said, okay, then I'm going to follow the guy who I know is an incredible talent, and he's the guy saying, and he read the script, he said, this is gold. And we never knew until a year later, when I was talking to Spielberg just on Minority Report, maybe 2 years later, that the reason they made it, well, Spielberg had such faith in it, even though he couldn't do it. But that was enough to convince Laddie, he said, I'm going to go ahead with this. You know, no matter if we can't get a star, a director, Ridley's nobody really. And I remember I was in the elevator years later, right, maybe 10 years later, and I was in the elevator with this crowded. It's always remained a warm memory in my thought. And Laddie and I had seen each other maybe 10 years after Eileen. And I said, Laddie, how are you doing? He said, fine, you know, I'm independent now. I'm not with any studio. I said, oh. And I announced the elevator. All strangers said, Alan Ladd. He only greeted them, both Alien and Star Wars. The whole Alien broke into applause, the whole audience. The elevator broke into cheers. And so that was nice because he, you know, personal instinct, whether it's David O. Selznick or anybody else, when they tell you, never mind Gone with the Wind, Civil War stories never work. But somebody has an instinct and says, I don't care what the odds say. I smell this is going to be something good, something amazing. You know?
Maybe time for two more. One for you.
Yeah, maybe you already covered this, but what were some of the big influences on this when you were writing it? I mean, I'm thinking The Thing, Forbidden Planet, you know, a lot of 50s sci-fi. Was there other stuff that you guys were thinking about when you were coming up with the story?
Yeah, so
Beyond Alien?
the influences that went into the writing. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was it?
The big influences on the story, just, was it 1950s sci-fi? What were you guys thinking about when you wrote it?
Nothing. We just wanted to make an amazing monster movie, but it was much more creative than, at that time, the trend toward science fiction, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, It for Beyond Space. There were B movies that were sci-fi. We wanted to make an A movie, but it was a dark side of Star Wars. But that good, an A plus in every way. And that's all we had in mind. But it took a lot of vision for people to see that they should proceed with this. Because you don't have a star or director that want to do it. Most people lose confidence. The practical world loses confidence. And Dan and I didn't have anything really to our credibility except Laddie's hunch, and then telling Spielberg confirming it and say, you got to do this, get it back before they sell it to somebody else. You regret it the rest of your life. And that seemed to be the catalyst. Said, okay, if Spielberg feels that way, and he's read the script, I'm going to follow my hunches.
Dan had an extensive background in horror and science fiction from childhood. He read Lovecraft, and so basically those were his influences. And those two, The Forbidden Planet was one of his favorite films. The Thing was one of his favorite films. Howard Hawks was one of his favorite directors.
From The Thing, the original, the first thing.
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And also Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He was very interested in trying to get that feeling of horror, of the unknown, as something that also influenced Alien, not only all the previous science fiction known to human man, but Dan had particular horror of like stick insects and katydids, and he grew up in the South, and they have a lot of strange bugs that sort of curl around, and a particular wasp that lays its eggs in a worm, and the eggs grow inside. So he brought his idea of horror, which would be these bugs putting eggs in other.
Yeah, the cycle of insects.
Right.
That's what influenced him. He said, well, Ron, this could be,
right.
aliens could have this kind of a cycle for all we know.
Right. So he brought that particular personal horror of his into his background of Lovecraft, and he called Alien his haunted house movie, and because he always wondered, like, well, why don't the people just leave the house? You know,
Yeah.
Well, they're in space, so they can't go in there. Stay there. But the acid blood, that was Ron Cobb thought of that. that was added in. Ron Cobb particularly thought, oh, you know, why can't they kill it?
Yeah.
You know, Ron Cobb said, well, I don't know, has it blood?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we've got it. It's in there. Yeah. So that was it. So, you know, they plucked ideas from everywhere.
Okay, let's take one last one if anyone's got something they want to jump in with. Yes.
I think this is one of the films that actually has a really authentic crew. I'm just kind of curious how you guys arrived at that. Or, you know,
Authentic what?
An authentic
An
crew?
authentic crew. A lot of times it doesn't really feel
Yeah.
like, it sort of feels like actors are together and they're not, they actually haven't been working, if that makes sense.
That the crew of the Nostromo seems very
Yeah.
real.
Like I said, part of it, like your fuckers in outer space, so you embraced that, you didn't think it wasn't corny, heroic astronauts, they were like real people. And that was one of the few movies that gave you good only science fiction very seldom had good character development. And that was a lot what Dan brought to it, because my strength wasn't always in characters. But once we had good characters, I mean, the whole movie became 10 times better because the audience loved those characters.
It was partially in the script and partially director, you know, on the set, getting, it's an ensemble cast. So, you know, it has to be written there, but they have to also, on the set, develop a rapport, which he successfully brought off.
One interesting thing, though, with Diane, that I don't know if you received this or knew about it, but Sigourney was the only inexperienced. She did this off-Broadway play, but the others were all really pro. They were all character actors. They weren't stars, but they were all had a ton of background, brilliant acting. And so in the movie, they were supposed to resent her, and that worked. In real life, they resented her because she was the niece of somebody famous, but she didn't get the role that way. She gave the best reading. But still, she was so inexperienced, and they thought, well, we're at the top of her game. And she was 29 years old, and what was great is they were supposed to have this resentment towards her. And in real life, that's what they had. She's terrible. I don't see her doing anything. I don't see her acting, because it was all behind the eyes. It was all like Gary Cooper when he would do a movie. It wasn't histrionics. And through the whole movie, they thought she was terrible. They said, she's worthless. And she stole the whole movie because she was so good and so new. But all in the movie, they were supposed to resent her. Yaphet hated to talk to her. What's she going to do when she gets down here? I'm coming down here. What the hell are you going to do down here? And that worked, that they all resented her in the whole filming. They never thought she was going to be that good. And she was perfect. She couldn't have been better for it. But that worked in its behalf, that they sort of resented her.
Well, I hope that you guys will come back for Aliens, and we'll pick up this conversation on April 29th. And please help me in thanking David, Diane, and Ron. At 40 years, this film is easily one of my all-time favorite movies. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk